Live. L-I-V-E 2023.
You think?
Do I think?
Do you think we're live?
We're
Oh,
live
look,
right
We
there.
are. Hey,
2023.
Happy New Year, everybody.
There's no one in the chat yet.
There's no one.
You just wasted.
I'm just going to wait a little while.
Yeah. Here, let's get us on. See what happens though. Oh, here I won't mess it up. See, but now we got to mute it again. All right, are you going to share it?
Well,
We've got 3 viewers already.
wow.
It's not even me.
So glad you're
All
here.
right, so glad. I'm going to share it.
I suppose I will too.
It's for service today. All right, friends, if you are tuning in with us live, Kim Chitwood, glad you're here, Mom. Welcome to the party. We are so glad you are joining us. I will post in the online campus. We have 6 viewers.
We're killing it right now.
Mm-hmm. All right. You want to do your thing now?
No.
You did your thing before nobody was here.
Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year. Oh,
Does it
man.
seem like New Year to you?
That's a weird question.
It is a weird question.
It usually, I think a lot of people have anticipation about a reset coming into 2023. The last couple years, I've started my reset 2 weeks before the year ended.
Sure.
So that way I can like get into a routine and make sure it's not just like, you know, I get 2 weeks into January and then give up.
Yeah.
I start 2 weeks early. So the New Year mindset for me has kind of been, a thing since the middle of December.
Yeah. I personally never, for a long time, never really, I knew New Year's was here, but I never really made resolutions or anything up until the last few years.
Yeah.
And then I have gotten into that reset.
You never used to make resolutions growing up?
Not really.
Really?
No.
Is that and this goes to our generationally speaking, hashtag ad, is that a boomer thing? Or are you just abnormal?
Honestly, I don't really know that. I think it was more of our whole family, circumstances that I don't think our family really did a big. We would have relatives over for New Year's Eve and things like that.
Really?
We never talked about about New Year's resolutions. We went off there for just a little bit.
We did.
But yeah, so it's interesting, and I don't know how you guys all feel, but
How do you feel about the new year?
I am very excited, honestly.
Yeah.
I really am, and I think that's why we're gonna talk about it a little bit today.
Good morning, Graham. Good morning, Colbert family. Good morning, Chitwood family. We've got 16 viewers with us.
Awesome. Hey, if you are viewing in, we would love to know you're there. Just say Happy New Year in the chat so we know that you're here, and we would love for you to, as we talk today, just kind of let us know how you're feeling, some thoughts that you may have,
Comments
things like
throughout.
that. We honestly, I've been very excited about this because we started talking about this months and months and months ago, whether we were going to do a service on Sunday, and we thought this was just basically the best way to kind of communicate.
Yep.
And honestly, this is my favorite way. I was going to say most funnest. Anyway, this is my
most
favorite.
enjoyable.
Yes, I love communicating this way to the church, and I just think it'll be a great.
You just love co-teaching with me.
I do. That I do.
Happy New Year, Mollers. Happy New Year, Geysers. Happy New Year, Dungus. Happy New Year, Millers. Happy New Year, Combs. Happy New Year, Hurtensteins, Eliases, Hollies. We are 22 viewers. Awesome. Hey, so many families. And 12 on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, let us know in the chat. Unless you're on your TV, that's a little difficult. But, hey, we're just excited to be here. We were, honestly, super bummed that we had to miss Christmas Eve last week.
That was.
It was a decision, friends, that
was 2 days of agony, is what that was.
And so many conversations. You and 2 elders actually showed up to the church Saturday for about an hour, debating different scenarios, and
it was awful.
It was just something where we chose the responsible, safe thing over our excitement.
Yeah.
Because Christmas Eve service this year was going to be pretty awesome.
It was going to be amazing.
And so we're saving it for next year.
Yeah. Unless we change our mind, but next year, just be ready for next year. It's going to be incredible. So.
Yeah. Well, hey, you want to kick this off?
Absolutely, absolutely. Hey, if you are tuning in and you don't happen to know these 2 strangers here in the seats, my name's Brad. I'm the lead pastor, and then this is Jordan Chitwood. He is our online pastor, and this is just one way that we love to communicate is through video and actually team teaching also.
Yeah.
But we thought this would be a great avenue, a great way for us just to kind of communicate what's coming. We're going to look back a little bit of last year, and then we're going to look forward. And honestly, I can't say in the last many years, of course, COVID plays into this, but I've never been more
pre-COVID, really.
excited about where we're heading in the new year.
Yeah, so kind of treat this as Vision Sunday almost for kind of our vision for 2023, but then also we want to celebrate some things of the past, which we did at our business meeting if you're able to join us, and then talk specifically about what we're going to be doing for the month of January for our series. And so this is going to be filled, we're going to share our theme verse for kind of our church, something we've
Right.
never done before,
Right.
have like a theme verse for the whole year. And really just walk through kind of, what we see happening in 2023. And so, Carrick, Nick, and Walter, good to see you. Joe Boonchich, good to see you. The Fishers, great to see you. Let us know if you're here. We'd love to connect with you.
And
throughout.
we talked a little bit earlier, if you're just joining us late, is that, everybody takes this whole New Year's thing a different way. Some
Right.
people really, make resolutions, and they say it's a fresh start. And for others, it's just, hey, it's just another day. We watch the Rose Parade, and that's it. But we don't think plan. But there is something unique about the beginning of the new year that no matter where you are, you do have this chance of a fresh start.
Right.
It is just another day. There's nothing special about New Year's. But I want to just challenge us as a church and as individuals to take some next steps, some very intentional next steps.
Yep.
And that's honestly your word for this year is intentional.
Yep. I had been, and for those, that know, I love to choose a word, kind of my New Year's word. I've been doing this ever since my uncle shared with me six years ago that he had been choosing a word that's going to be kind of the theme. And so this year, my word is intentionality. And I was at the gym this week just thinking about my health and thinking about my job and my relationships and how 2022, so many things got put kind of on hold of things that I wanted to do and invest in and excited about, and a lot of relationships because it was just, a trying year of ministry. And so a lot of things kind of got put in second place or third place, tertiary place. And I really wanted to be intentional this year of getting things back and reprioritize kind of things I'm passionate about, but then also make sure that every person knows that I'm intentional in my relationship with them. And
I think that's awesome. And one of the things that I love that, because I think I'm going to kind of adopt your word.
Good.
Actually. And I think as a church, we need to be more intentional.
Absolutely.
But as I was thinking, and being a Colts fan this year, I started thinking about getting back to fundamentals. And we had talked about this before this, and that's one of the reasons why we're kicking off the year the way we are, is getting back to the core stuff of what we need to do to be healthy.
Absolutely.
Spiritually and emotionally and even in our health. So
Absolutely.
so whether you're a big, hey, let's go and set some goals or not, I think this is going to be really good. So let's start with just talking about some of the wins from last year.
Last year was so incredible. Friends, we talked about some of these things with our business meeting, but then also Marissa and I had a date day this year, and I texted you and Bruce, and I said Marissa wanted to challenge, me and her, like, what if we just find one win of every month, like all of 2022? And it was one of those things where when we started talking about this outline, really for the business meeting of finding our wins for the year, you start to realize how much good God did
Unbelievable.
every month.
And it's very easy, especially when you're looking forward, to just forget about those kind of things.
Absolutely.
And we've never been very good at celebrating the wins.
We're terrible at it.
Because we're always looking to the next thing, the next step, because we preach that. But I love this. So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, you're fine. So some of the things that we loved this year, going all the way back, we tried some different events, obviously, in the springtime. We had our Water Wars that got postponed. But even Water Wars, we had 70 or so people, and that was after a canceled event. And what was so cool about Water Wars this year, Brad, was that we had mostly C3 Sport families who joined us for 2 hours of fun. And so that was a summer event going right into baptism. Probably one of, if not our best baptism outside we've ever done.
It was great.
We had, 17 people, 15 to 17 people be baptized, all different ages, and just hearing the stories. And it was cool because we did an outside service into a breakfast. Or no, we did the breakfast first.
Right, we did the breakfast.
And then did service out by the pond. Probably one of my favorites we've done.
And all that was intentional, because we wanted to create, coming out of COVID, first year basically in full throttle as a church, we wanted to make sure we had as many connection events as we could.
That was kind of our word for the year.
Yeah, just connect.
Community,
community,
connection.
connect, and we did that through S'morefest, some of the other things, and not these big, wild, lavish events, but just things that we could get people together.
Simple events.
It was, and they all turned out honestly really well.
That translated us into S'mores Fest, which was another huge success, and our outdoor services, where Piper had this vision for us to mesh kind of the traditional Vacation Bible School
Right.
with our non-traditional type setting of how we do church. Mesh it for outdoor services.
It was amazing.
It was a blast.
It was so much fun.
So much fun.
So much fun. And then something we had never tried before. We kicked off our Be Rich campaign, which
Oh my goodness! Highlight of the year?
Probably the highlight of the year. Had no idea how that was going to go, and you all responded unbelievably. Where we just collected money and just gave it all away, and it was like $42,000.
Yep, $40,000+ plus 300 items that Bridge Kids raised,
Donated.
and we had realistic goals, and we had some. Like even my unrealistic goal was 20,000.
Right.
Doubled that.
Doubled that.
And just to see the church get excited about generosity.
And that's the fundamental stuff we're talking about. And that's when we knew that we weren't onto something. God was onto something, and that we were having hearts change. People were saying, you know what, it's fun to be generous.
Yeah.
And we're going to continue doing that.
We had like 118 families, I think, participate in that.
Yeah.
22 new givers.
And that was our goal more than actual raising the money. Was we wanted 100% participation, and we basically got very near that.
We estimated about 140, 150 families at Crossbridge, and the fact that we had about 120 participate in the financial part.
Yeah.
And we didn't even include the Bridge Kids families, who some may have chosen that to be their give. Absolutely blew us away.
And then we went out of that and went into Christmas families and
crushed the Christmas family give,
Christmas thing,
going right into Jingle Jam, which was probably the biggest event we've ever done, inside at least.
Right.
And Piper put an insane amount of hours. Our staff, Trevor,
Trevor's still recuperating.
Trevor's still recovering. He was pretty tired. But then, if you missed Jingle Jam this year, make sure you mark it on the calendar next year. Not the whole. We don't have the dates yet. Just mark the whole December.
Yeah, just make sure that no matter what you're doing, you're going to cancel.
We had probably 220, 230 there.
Yeah, it was right around 200.
Right around 200 people.
Yeah.
And we had so many families. We had multiple people who told me, they said, I came as a Grinch because my kids wanted to be there.
Yeah.
And I left as an elf.
Yeah.
Left excited and ready to be there. But
was cool.
Hey, just want to give some people hello. Happy New Year to Kaisers, Jones family, Hanson, Linda Creek, the Sittlers, and the Shaws. Good to see you all. So,
the other cool thing, just real quickly, is that, and this is something you don't get to see a lot of, but in our position we do, is all kinds of people taking next steps.
Yep. People
being challenged in their faith, taking next steps, getting out of their comfort zone. So that was really cool. And then just a ton of new families calling Crossbridge home. So it's just been an amazing year. You are a part of that. You're giving, you're serving, has allowed all that to happen. God is doing something incredible here, and we're just humbled to be a small part of that.
Yeah, and while this year was an incredible year with a lot of highs, there's also a lot of people, many in the chat as well, and us included, this was a tough year.
It was a tough year.
And that's part of why we wanted to go back and celebrate some things month by month or season by season, because there was some seasons where we were just emotionally drained. There were a lot of families in need. We were experiencing some burnout in different seasons, and had a lot of loss, a lot of grief.
A lot of grief.
Even as of recently in the last month, quite a few Crossbridgers lost loved ones.
Yep.
Mental health and mental illness at what felt like an all-time high. It's kind of that post-COVID coma of mental health, where people are now we're really settling into the new normal, and so people are trying to adjust, and lot of diagnosis for illnesses long term.
Right.
But also influenza hit hard, RSV hit hard.
I was out for 2 weeks
You're out
myself.
for 2 weeks. I was out for 7 to 10 days.
Yeah.
10 days before I felt myself.
Yeah. And we had we had people with marriage issues, relationship issues and things. So we want to acknowledge that it was a tough year for many of our Crossbridge families.
Yep.
And the church was able to come along some of those, the ones that we knew of and we knew we could help. But it is one of those things that we want to acknowledge, that in all the great stuff, God's is in all the great stuff, and He's in also all the hard stuff.
Because here's the one thing you don't want to do with the New Year's. You don't want to just act as though your struggles of yesterday are just going to disappear when you hit midnight.
No.
You want to, I think it's appropriate to have a reset emotionally and spiritually and mentally, to just say, you know what, it is a new day, that verse in the Bible, new day, new mercies. That, that's the same. You don't have to wait for 2023.
Right.
There isn't anything magical that happens, but there is something about hope that it kind of reignites. Like, you know what? All right, fresh start. But the struggles of yesterday still may exist for many families.
And we don't want to give the impression that just because it's New Year and you've said all these things that it may even make it harder.
Right.
And especially, and I will say this because we're going to move into how we're going to kick off the year next is the warning that we'll tell you is the same thing we tell all the people we're baptizing is that when you get serious about your faith, when you say, I'm going to get back to the fundamentals, I'm going to give myself, I'm going to be all in this year for God, the enemy is prowling around like a lion, and he's going to want to take us down.
Yep.
So understand that and know that, and be prepared as we can for that.
Yep. We want to emphasize the struggle because, and it's not just like single event struggle. Often when we think about the enemy attacking us, it's perhaps something major, like a loss of a loved one, which, whether that was the enemy or whether that was health, whatever it might be,
right,
often gets associated with the devil. But we often think of the big events. What we don't emphasize enough is the seasons of weariness or exhaustion, where it's like 4 to 5 to 6 months of just feeling bleh.
That is huge.
Yep.
And we need to remember that, especially as we get to the end of talk today, because I think that's what plays into our verse that we really chose for this year.
Yeah.
So we just feel like this is going to be an amazing year for Crossbridge. Not saying it's not going to have some hard times, some difficult conversations, some difficult things that we're going to have to go through.
We're really excited, though.
But man, I think it's going to be one of the most productive years that we've ever had. And
before you get into it, just to let you all know, friends, our staff is in probably the healthiest and best place we've ever been.
Absolutely.
We're jacked. And COVID was obviously trying for everybody, but for a ministry staff trying to figure it out, we came into 2021 all burnt out and feeling just disconnected as a team. Not we were still friends and cordial, but it just felt like we were all doing in our lanes. We spent 2022 really invested in one another, and our staff, and I share this just to let you know, like your church, your team, we are the most healthiest and excited that we've ever been.
And we are. So pray for us.
Yeah. So next week, it's all going down. No, I just mean, it's going to be a good year.
Yeah.
And I'm jacked about it.
So we're going to start 2023 with an emphasis on prayer.
Yep.
And we started this actually last year with some prayer services, things like that. Our Next Steps Pastor Kim has been pushing us with this and has gotten us to a place that I think is really, really crucial and had been. Yep. That's one of the reasons why the staff is
why our staff is so close.
Exactly. And so we're going to really start this year with some intentional prayer time. We're going to start the year with a 21 days of prayer and fasting.
Yep, and this is something new that we've never done.
We've never done this before.
As a church, and some of you, as you hear fasting,
you
might either cringe a little bit or because fasting is often associated with food, which we'll talk about here in a second, you might have some either PTSD if you have an eating disorder, or you might struggle with just dietary restrictions. And so we're going to talk about how we define fasting and what our expectations for prayer and fasting are, because we want to be extremely intentional this month to prepare, to launch us into the new year, to say we're going to become a prayerful church that also focuses on sacrificing something of ourselves for God.
And I think if we can do that, if we start that, building that fundamental into our lives, it's not only going to impact our lives, our family lives, our community lives, our church lives. We're going to make a difference in the kingdom, and we're so excited about it. So this is actually going to start on January 9th, and it's going to end on the 29th. We got a special service and things like that. So 21 days of fasting and prayer. So let's talk about that fasting, because you read a lot about it in Scripture. And now it's even this big thing of how to lose weight. There's all these fasting plans, things like that.
Intermittent fasting, keto,
and that's not what we're talking about. It can include food, but it is so much more than that. And the thing that I kind of studied as we're going in here is that back in the first century, in Jesus' day, food was a scarcity.
Right.
And so they were giving something up that was a life-sustaining thing. And that has changed a little bit in our own culture and our own society.
And food back then didn't taste great.
Right.
Unless you were the wealthiest of the wealthy, and then maybe you could afford salt to put on it. So when we're thinking of them giving up food, to your point, it really was giving up something that was keeping them not necessarily alive, but it was their source of energy. It was their source of, honestly, life.
Exactly.
And again, we're not challenging you to give, like, if you are diabetic, we're not calling you to give up
Right.
food uh, to find your only source of life and energy. But that's part of why when you read Scripture, it was mostly about food, because that was the biggest, that was what people relied on. That became an idol. That became
exactly.
Their center focus. There might be some people here though, Brad, that don't understand what fasting means.
Yeah. Let me give
I
you
love this definition you came up with.
A definition I found is this: is that fasting denies our flesh, our person, what it wants, so that we can focus more clearly on strengthening our spirits.
Yep.
So it's denying ourselves of something that I will say enjoy.
Indulge in.
Indulge in is a great word.
Yeah.
So we deny ourselves that so that we can focus on our
that
spirits,
energy you would focus
on
elsewhere.
that, on our spirit, on our spiritual way. And here's something that I know you've preached about this, I don't know how many times, is that you've talked about when you take something out of your life.
Yep. Give up, give in.
Give up, give in. Exactly. That what we're going to ask you to do is find something in your life that you can deny yourself, that you can give up. But if you don't, explain that a little bit. If you don't put something back in.
Right. Yep. And this is a mindset my counselor gave me a couple years ago and this is the truth with porn. This is the truth with any addiction that you have. Any addiction counselor will tell you, if you're going to give up something in your life and not replace it with a healthy substitute, your body just naturally, physically, and mentally is still craving that empty space. It's almost like you just choosing to give up, some part of your day and then just sitting on the couch for 3 or 4 hours. Trevor might like that, okay? But even Trevor, while he's sitting on the couch, is doing something. This would be just completely cold turkey, sitting on the couch, staring at a wall for 3 or 4 hours. You'd go crazy and eventually give back in to your addiction or to your struggle or what. So the point of fasting is to give up something that you are indulging in, okay, that may not be drawing you close to God, so that you can give in.
And that may be something good or bad.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. So go ahead.
And a lot of these things aren't inherently bad.
Right.
A lot of these things become bad when they take up the priority over our time with God. That's why when you pair fasting, denying yourself of something that you indulge in, again, has this baggage of being food only. There's people who do Netflix fasts, technology fasts. There's people who step away from an addiction, which can be really good because then you start 21 days. But when you take that fasting and you pair it with prayer, now you are giving into something spiritual. So often when my parents, they used to do fasts all the time. We used to do different things like a sugar fast for a week, or something I like to do is a fried food fast for a week, just to kind of cleanse your body. But then you have to give into something healthy, like eating healthy food. When you're doing something spiritual to try to grow spiritually, pairing that with prayer or time alone with God or journaling or even exercising, something that is going to trigger focus and reset and reliance on God, that's where you then give in and you start to see a lot of spiritual growth.
And again, I think that changes us in the long term.
Absolutely.
And I absolutely love that.
And and why 21 days is you're establishing. There's actually some emphasis. Do you know why?
You're establishing a new habit.
Right.
I mean,
it takes about 21 days.
Right.
They say it takes 7 days to break a habit and 21 days to establish a habit.
A new habit.
A new habit. And so that's why it's important for this.
So we just thought, man, what a great way just to start this new year off with this fasting and prayer emphasis that we're going to do. And I find it interesting. In one of my notes here, I put Jesus is only recorded as fasting once. Did you know that?
Mm-mm. Is that during the 40-day?
Yeah.
In the desert?
That's the only time he's actually recorded as fasting. Anyway,
and it was to establish himself in the posture he needed to then go on and do 3 years of ministry.
Exactly.
So that's part of, again, sometimes you see people who are going on big trips like missions experiences, or a lot of pastors will do it if they're preparing a book. So for me, when I released my last book, I fasted from social media the entire month of February, didn't post anything, and stayed off of that just as a fast to prepare my heart. And you'll see some people do that. so some of the things we're doing prayer-wise before we move on this year. Our online campus, you said, just like you said, we're kicking off January 9th through the 29th. That is our 21-day period. So this week, don't expect anything. Kim is kicking off January 8th.
Right.
Is that right? January 8th, our series called Dangerous Prayers.
Right.
Which, for those of you who are familiar with Craig Rochelle, that's a very short, simple read by him. I listen to it on Audible. You can listen to audiobook. It's like a 2-hour listen, very simple. But Dangerous Prayers is going to be our series we're walking through as a church for 3 weeks. And we're also going to be doing that 21 days on our online campus, have a new prayer prompt each day in our online Facebook campus, going through that book. And then, why don't you tell them what we're going to do at the end of January?
We're going to do the last service at the end of January is going to be a prayer service. And don't let that freak you out. Doesn't mean you're going to have to come in and pray out loud with anybody or anything like that. But we had so many people say, man, this prayer service that you did.
That we tried last year a couple times during the
was
week.
so powerful. And so it's just going to be a calm place that we're going to get together as a church. We're going to pray over.
You'll stay in your chairs.
Stay in your chair. We're going to pray in
provide some prompts for you, like, hey, now spend 2 minutes praying on mental illness.
Yeah.
And so you'll sit in your chairs, you'll just silently pray.
There will be music.
We'll play some worship throughout.
More than likely, we're going to do communion during that time and things like that. So it's just going to be a reflective prayer time. I think it's going to be a powerful service. We'd love for you to really try to attend one of those services. It's going to be a great way for us to finish that.
Yep.
And I think especially if we're engaged and going through that whole 21 days of really preparing ourselves, it's going to be powerful. We're going to see the Spirit move.
Yep, and on our online campus, I'm going to post a 21 days of prayer and fasting YouVersion Bible plan that you can join as our church.
That would be great.
There's plenty of them on YouVersion that they do. A lot of churches, especially during January, do this kind of as a spiritual reset to start the new year. And so there's going to be different ways. You can do it via the YouVersion Bible plan. You can do it on our online campus with our book, Dangerous Prayers.
And Piper, as a Christmas gift to all her parents, gave out a full year calendar of prayer of every day that they can pray with their families and things.
That's
We
awesome.
still got a lot of those left.
So,
we can hook
yep.
you up with those.
Yep.
There's all kinds of ways to get involved. And let's just, before we move on to this last item, let's just talk through and give some people some ideas of, okay, I don't even know where to start with this whole fasting thing.
Fasting, what? Yep.
And I just think some areas that we just want to prompt you with. And you mentioned addictions earlier, and I think this is an area is a great place to start, especially for some of those people who struggle with these. And we all have addictions in our lives.
Yep.
Okay, it may be a pornography addiction. Maybe for 21 days, this is it, man. I'm gonna go cold turkey, and that's what I'm gonna pray with. Other kind of addiction. Maybe it's an alcohol addiction. Maybe it is just, you name it. There's all kinds of things like that hold us back.
Yeah, and you listed some of the big ones too. Let's think about, maybe it's a technology addiction. Maybe it's a Netflix addiction.
And this is what we talked about actually earlier.
Right.
One of the things that Barb and I love to do is we get home at night and we turn on Netflix or whatever we're binge watching, and we'll do many, many hours of that. And I told you, I said, the thing that I'm going to commit to is at 10 o'clock, it is TV off, and I'm going to go and I'm going to pick out books and I'm going to read at least a chapter.
You're giving up an hour of time.
I'm going to give up an hour of time, and I'm going to
something
invest
that
it into a book that I'm interested in reading and things like that. And I actually tested it, like you said, at the beginning. I gave up over the break, but it changed dramatically in the week or two that I was even doing it. So I'm looking forward to really doing that. So giving up something that is really important to you, or not important, but fills your time.
Right, time, but then also, like, some people do give up sugar. Some people give up coffee. Some people give up something. They're like, you know what, during this fast, I want to just stretch myself, push myself, sometimes even punish myself to just try to, build up that resiliency. And again, there's so many different levels of fasting. We want to expand that definition to say it really comes down to pray about it. Spend this week. That's why we're not starting until January 9th. Spend this week saying, God, what can I give up?
Right. What is it you're calling me to give up?
Yep.
Because I think there's something specific for each and every one of us.
Could be Facebook.
Could be.
Something that I love to suggest to people who are, have absolutely no idea where to start. Turn on screen time on your phone. If you have an iPhone, you can turn on screen time, go to settings, screen time, turn it on, and let it just track. And that will then just track. Because a lot of people will say, well, I'm not addicted to my phone.
Yeah.
I'm not addicted to technology. I'm not addicted to social media. Just let it track how much time you spend on each thing. And then on next Sunday, before you choose, if you're still struggling, go look on your screen time and see, whoa, I spent 3 hours a day on this area, or 47 minutes, or I had 400 pickups. Whatever it might be, spend this week really thinking about it.
Yeah, and I would challenge all of us to look past the food area. If food is a hang up for you, or there's something, one of the things that I could be is, I drink too much soda.
Sure.
And so maybe that's an area.
Yep.
It's something like that, but it's not hey, let's starve ourselves necessarily for this food thing.
Absolutely not.
I think it's more for us is the technology thing, is it the addiction thing. I think that's what we're looking at. I think that's going to make the bigger impact than anything that we do.
Something I've done in the past too is giving up. This is going to sound so weird. Giving up judgment, or give up bitterness. Where you're like, you know what? I'm just going to be as patient as possible this month. Which again sounds like, well, shouldn't you do that every month? Yes, but where we've gotten as a society is like, driving with you on a roundabout. You know what I'm saying? But that's what I'm saying. Like when you have that excuse now where you're like, you know what? No, I'm not going to road rage, or I'm not going to swear. Maybe you love to swear.
Yeah.
And you're like, you know what? For 21 days, I'm just going to use different language.
Yep.
And just see the positive effects. So spend this week saying, God, praying the prayer, God, show me. It's the David prayer, exposing me, show me what you are, create in me a pure heart. What are you calling me to give up for this 21 days? And who knows, maybe at the end of 21 days, there's been so many people who have given up things long term.
Yeah.
I knew in college we had to do a prayer and fasting. I gave up soda. I made it 4 years of soda.
And then
I
you start
had
hanging
a
around
kid.
me.
And I hang out with you, and I had a kid, and Diet Pepsi came back in my life.
There you go.
We're excited about January. We're excited about this series. So many different ways to connect. And then also at the end of the month, a prayer service for Sunday morning is going to be really cool.
Yeah. So we're just going to devote ourselves for this next month of prayer and devotion to who God is calling us to be as individuals and as a church. So we want to close today just talking about I just came to the staff and particularly Jordan and said, hey, this is just a verse that has been on my heart because of what I see people going throughout the year, this last year. And it's a verse from Matthew chapter 11, verse 28 and 30.
And this is going to be our theme verse for the year.
And so you're going to hear us come back to this. Some of the series that we do, we'll have this emphasis on it. We'll come back to here. But here's what it says. It says, come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. This is Jesus talking. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy, and my burden is light. And we've had so many discussions between the staff and looking at the frantic pace that Crossbridgers are living, and we're saying, man, it's not the way to live.
Right.
And it's including ourselves.
Yep.
We've really checked our own hearts with this.
Yep.
And we look at our children and we look at our teens, and we've watched Trevor struggle with how these teens are handling anxiety and things, and the pressure that they're under in their school, in their lives, in the sports, and you name it. And it's not the way we are designed and wired to live. And Jesus himself says, come to me. There's something peaceful. There's something that as we get closer to him, that our lives become more restful.
Yeah, Trevor's mic's on. You're not going to see him on the camera, but Trev, why don't you just share kind of after you got back from our Discover conference or 365, or you just kind of had a mindset reset, but then also just recognizing how much our teens are struggling. Why don't you just share a little bit of kind of what that has looked like with our teens and your mindset with ministry moving forward, but then also what they're dealing with?
Yeah, so for me, I think this really started about 4 years ago, where I started to realize, like, hey, we have some teens who are just really struggling. And, for a few years I wrote it off as, hey, it's just this specific group of people. And if you've watched any of the videos that we've put out with teens, we do a couple a year. Yeah. Every story, if you go back and watch those, they're all the same right now, where it's teens are just overwhelmed. And I think if adults are honest, like you're saying, like, we admit that we are overwhelmed. And I think, like, we've created a culture just of busyness, of pressure, of expectation, and year after year after year, that has trickled down to our teens, and they really have embodied that to the point where I think we as adults, like we try so hard to push teens because we want them to be better or whatever. But I think we have to take an honest look and ask, like, do we really need to be pushing people? Is this really what's best? Or is what's best, like Jesus is saying, right? Like, come to me and let me remove things from you. Let me take things from you. And so, yeah, when I've watched our teens the last several years, and even this year, like, honestly, I was in a pretty bad place because I feel like I'm like, I don't even know how to help them because they're all really, really broken. And I feel helpless, watching them. And so, yeah, I think this whole idea is something that we as adults really need to learn and embrace ourselves so that way we can trickle down a different culture, a different attitude, and hopefully help swing and save a whole generation right now that is just drowning under pressure and mental health.
I love that. and again, I think that's part of why we're starting the year. We are
Yeah.
is getting back to the fundamentals. But I want to break this verse down just a little bit because I found this fascinating as I was studying this. It says, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened," and some versions say labor. And if you break those words down, the weary or labor are burdens that we take on ourselves, that we feel like we've got to do something, and so we're. And again, going back to social media, of keeping up with whoever it is, whether it be in our finances or where we live, our kids and their education, their kids and their grades, the kids and their sports and things like that. It's expectations we put on ourselves.
Yep.
And then it goes on and says weary and burdened, and some versions say heavy laden, and those are actually burdens that others put on us. And that word is only used in another time is Matthew 24:4, where it's talking about the religious leaders putting burdens on people of how they are to perform religiously, if you will.
Wow.
So I think as we look at this, it tells us something. We do this to ourselves, and other people, and even being aware of that is a place to start.
Yep.
And so we want you to live your best life, and we believe that is through Jesus, and he says that his yoke is absolutely, the way to go. Yeah. And we want you to have that kind of freedom.
Yep.
That's what we're hoping for, and that's what we're praying for.
That's good stuff. Friends, some of you this year may experience some loss, mental illness, struggles, some illnesses, some really tough times and dark times. And I love this as a theme verse for the whole year of Crossbridgers to say, you know what? Whether this is the best year of your life or this may be the darkest year of your life, we can come and we can rest. And what a four-letter word that us Americans often avoid, rest.
Right.
And what does it truly look like? I don't think any of us are really good at rest. Even those who rest too much aren't good at rest, and those who work too much aren't. Like, it really is so good for us to reset, recenter, say, you know what, God, this month we're going to spend time as a church praying, fasting, and resting in you. Because we believe that 2023 can be, as a church, the best year yet.
Right.
Doesn't mean that there's not going to be individual struggles that we walk through, that we navigate. We're going to experience suffering, but to have a verse like this to be able to come back to, it's going to be powerful. So, Brad, we kind of touched on a couple things wrapping up. Why don't you just kind of recap our challenge for our church family, our YouTube watchers, Facebook watchers, and our entire church family? What is our challenge for the month of January, but then translating maybe to 2023?
Yeah, our challenge is just to step back, take a very deep breath, and ask ourselves, God, what do you have for me? And we believe the best way to do that, starting from the very beginning, is a fast and prayer. Me giving up something that's either important to me or keeping me away from being the best version that God wants of me.
Yep.
And replacing it with spiritual disciplines of prayer specifically. And there's also time alone, just resting and also reading Scripture. But particularly that prayer time, I just think if we can get people talking to God and in that relational mode, it's just going to change people. And then at the end of that, we're going to do the prayer service that we talked about. But I just think that sets us up the best way we possibly can for the remainder of 2023. And when we start feeling that weariness, that burden, that life is just too much, there's too much going on, that we we key back into saying, okay, this is not how Jesus is asking me to live.
Yep.
So there's something off here somewhere.
Yep.
Where do I need to get back? And I
Yep.
want you to understand that we don't get it right. The staff didn't get. You heard Trevor say that it was a struggle area of his life. It's a struggle in our lives, and we just got to step back and we have accountability in our staff because we see each other so much.
Yep.
But we want to also help you with that. Find somebody that you can have accountability. Know that we are here. If there's something that's going on, we want to be able to walk with you through teaching you helping you find that rest and
Right.
find that comfort in that.
Yep. And so if you're looking for something to kind of give into, again, download either the audiobook of Dangerous Prayers. We're going to be walking through that. We have 3 weeks of teaching on it. And then we have our online campus. Walk through Dangerous Prayers. It's an easy read. You can also buy it, or it's an easy listen.
Your mom did post in the chat. It's on the library audiobook app for free as well.
Awesome. So if you go to Hoopla or there's another one, the Hoopla app, so you can get it for free, audiobook or ebook. Read it that way. But even if you're just like, you know what, I'm going to just read for 20 minutes. You might be a terrible reader or hate reading.
I'm terrible at it.
And you don't like it sometimes.
Right.
You'll go stretches where you read a lot, and then you'll go stretches where you're just your brain's exhausted.
And that's the other thing I don't want people to get to. You may do very well for 3 or 4 days and then fall off the wagon.
Yep.
It's okay.
Yep.
It's okay. You're starting the process.
That's why so many people give up their resolutions.
Don't give up.
Because they think that you have to do 365 days of perfection.
Right.
Friends, that's not possible.
No. I had somebody ask me, you want to do a 365-day Bible through the year plan? And I said, no, I don't.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
I knew I was setting myself up to fail for one thing.
Yeah.
And so again, don't put that pressure, that burden on ourselves, as we talked about.
Yep. And so find a book, find a journal, maybe you're like, you know what, I'm going to commit to going to the gym. I'm going to commit to praying 5 minutes every morning, 1 minute every morning.
Yep.
I'm going to pray. I'm going to commit to, maybe you're like, you know what, I don't really have a set routine with my work because I can get up whenever I want. So I'm going to start getting up a little earlier and then just going out for a walk. Maybe I'm going to eat healthier. Maybe you're like, you know what, I've been doing a lot of fried food, fast food. I'm just going to give up fast food. Whatever it might be, just really challenge you to then not just give it up, okay, but then ask the question, what can I give into to really stretch me? If you're going to give up fast food, that's incredible. Now have the mindset to say, I'm going to give up fast food and I'm going to go on a 20-minute walk each morning. And during that walk, I'm going to spend time in prayer, or a 5-minute walk, or I'm going to give up, soda, and then I'm going to drink more water with the mindset that, Jesus is living water. And during that time, every time I fill up my water bottle, I'm going to, recite, John, verse where I am the way, the truth, and the life. Something simple where you're...
Very simple. It doesn't have to be complicated. We were talking about that walk. I just thought, if you don't know because a lot of people say, I don't know what to pray about. Take a walk in your neighborhood and pray for every other house.
That's brilliant.
It's so simple, and it doesn't have to be anything.
Yep.
Hey, I don't know these people, God, but I just pray that,
They might have hope.
Yeah.
Hey, God, how you doing today? That's part of what this series is the disciples. I was talking to you and my mom about this series, and as I was reading, I don't even remember what I was reading or listening to. I think it's the only time the disciples asked Jesus to teach them how to do something. Teach us how to pray.
It's the only thing.
Isn't that fascinating? That just shows how important and how much Jesus prayed. Because they're watching their leader do this, and they're like, hey, Jesus. It's the only time in the Gospels that the disciples deliberately asked Jesus to teach them. They could have asked us to teach them how to do anything else. But so it's a genuine question. How do I pray? We're going to be walking through 3 different prayers for this series, Dangerous Prayers. And it's also one of those things, if you don't practice it, you're never going to get better at it.
That's right.
So you have to start somewhere.
We are so excited. We're so glad that you joined us, and we're looking forward to the beginning of this year. We're looking for the whole year. It's going to be amazing to watch what God is going to do, and we're excited about it. Why don't you close us in prayer?
Yeah, hey, just pray with me where you are. Hey, Lord, thank you so much for being an awesome God, and that we were able to, some of us celebrate the holidays, some of us grieve during the holidays, some of us just feeling lonely, but then also some of us filled with community, God. And what's so cool about our church is we have people in every stage of life. Mm-hmm. And so we just pray and praise you in every stage of life, in the valley, in the mountaintop. Here is your sheep, and we know that as your sheep, we could just be a little bit chaotic at times, and we can run away, and we can be heavy burdened, but we can also be bitter and judgmental. And so, God, we just ask for your grace going into this year. We lift you up. And Lord, I specifically pray for our teens during this time too, that God, that all the parents watching would really just pour into their kids to say, you know what, I'm going to be intentional with my kids this year. I'm not going to place too much pressure on them. I'm not going to place unnecessary boundaries. I'm going to keep them in a healthy state of mind, and then get them to church. And that starts with our parents showing up to church and prioritizing that. But then also all of our singles, Lord, I just know that this season, especially during the wintertime and the holiday season, can be very lonely and lonesome, and probably receive some uncomfortable questions from relatives this season of when's the significant other coming. So God, I just pray for our singles right now and just ask that they would lean into you, but then also find friends and find comfort knowing that you're still there. God, many of us are heavy burdened, but we know that you give us rest. And so we pray that over all of our church in 2023. In your name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Hey, thanks so much for joining us. We cannot wait to see you next Sunday as we kick off Dangerous Prayers. Have a great rest of the day.
See ya.